Hello and welcome to Media Writing Week 6, our final week. I thought I would go through a presentation for the class and just elaborate on some of the topics as I'm going. You can either watch this one or you can just go through the lecture on your own if you prefer. But I think if you watch this one, you'll just pick up on a little bit more stuff that I'm able to talk about other than there just being the bullet in the slide. So hopefully this helps for the final writing assignment, and you guys are able to write that screenplay with some knowledge that you've picked up over the course, and following the formatting and just making sure that you guys are writing good stories. That's really the aim of it, is to come up with good stories that you can develop further into actual projects, either for television or for film. And that's the highlight of today's lecture. What are the differences and some of the nuances between writing for film versus television? So we'll get through that today. This class is asynchronous, so it's, watch at your own pace, do it at your own pace. No difference there. Just really we're going to be looking at the difference in the mechanics between television and film. That's really all it boils down to. The script look really similar between both writing for television or for film. It really just comes down to the structure, how the pacing is. You're telling a story over a long form versus short form. Instead of 2 hours all contained, you could be telling a story like Walking Dead or Breaking Bad for multiple seasons. And that's really how the writing changes between the two. So, the movie to screen this week is The Holiday Movies That Made Us. I also highlight that there is The Movies That Made Us on Netflix. They are great to watch for young filmmakers. I love watching them myself. You just get to see behind the scenes of some of your favorite movies. Dirty Dancing is one of them on there. But specifically, the one I want you to watch for this week is The Holiday Movies That Made Us. It's on Netflix. It's got a great behind the scenes knowledge of Elf, and I think the Christmas Nightmare or something like that it's called. I can't remember the exact title of the second one, but really great insights. And I think it highlights the difference between television, which it is. It's a television show in modern form, streaming on something like Netflix, versus what it's actually talking about, which is narrative film. So it gives you a little bit of both, and I think it's just appropriate to watch for this week. So, again, I do need to fix this slide. It says Sunday, but our class does end on Wednesday, so I will update the slide. You know what? I'm just going to do it right now, just so since we are live, I can fix it. Right? I'll come in here and change this to Wednesday, and that is 10 Feb 2021. Real quick, fix that just so it is right. I don't want you guys to think the class goes on. It is only a half week. That's why I'm putting out this module earlier and giving you guys a little bit more information with the visual slide, just so that you can have it for the early final, which is next week. And then that concludes our class. We're done. 6 weeks blew right by. I don't know how it went for you guys, but for me, it just went by in a flash. So just make sure you do have all of your assignments in, due by next Wednesday, 10 February, before 11:59. And if they're after that, there's nothing I can do about it this time. The class won't let me grade anything that's beyond that time. It considers that the end of the class. So make sure you have everything in before then. You all know how to get a hold of me. You're welcome to, ask me questions after class is complete. If you have projects in the future, I am teaching this class again next semester. I'm also teaching the Zoom version of it in addition to the asynchronous version. And then I'm also teaching media aesthetics, if anybody's interested in taking that. I think they're both full right now, but I will let you guys in if you do want to take it out. I'll add you to the course. Quick overview about the module. Go through it on Canvas. Make sure you read through the lectures, which is this right here we're going through now. You can look through them on your own. If you want to go follow the links and stuff, you'll have to go into that other one that I have posted in Canvas to follow links. But, take a look at these slides. Watch the holiday movies that made us. It's excellent. And then do your final screenplay. Make sure you're formatting properly. Your scenes are always either interior or exterior, INT or EXT. There's no other option. Your setting, garage, street, front yard, interior house, bedroom, and then, of course, day or night. I know some people like to put midday or magic hour, sunrise, and you can do that. I mean, it's your screenplay. You can do whatever you want. but the correct, industry standard is day or night. And then you just work to that. It's really the director and the cinematographer that are going to choose the lighting anyway. So you really should just be putting day or night. And then you guys did a really good job with your descriptions, with your action in your scenes. Really good. Keep them brief. Capitalize characters for the first time. Put their age. Tell us a little bit about them. That really helps. And then as far as capitalization of sounds, boom, a loud crash outside. Crash should be caps, like we've talked about. If you guys have any more questions about this, definitely just Google it. You can or follow the links in the presentations of the previous lectures. Tons of great information out there. I love Studio Binder. I love, I'm not ashamed to say I love No Film School. They put out great information for reference when you know what you're looking for. So go check that stuff out for formatting. Dialogue, everybody's doing a real nice job with dialogue. To me, your dialogue seemed real natural, authentic. Your characters seem individualistic. I can hear their voice as I'm reading them. So that tells me you guys, you understand that component very well as the pacing. Your characters seem to talk at a good pace. As I'm reading it, it feels like it would be natural to follow them along. Even though, what they're saying isn't always natural. Of course, we got the example of Joey with "How you doing," from Friends. TV in particular seems to be much more focused on that kind of dialogue, the one-liners, especially when you have a sitcom or the weekly drama. Characters tend to have their own things that they say. If you watch Bones, she says the same things over and over in episodes, as well as the male character whose name I can't think of right now. Scully or Sully, Agent Scully, something like that. But they have things that they say and characteristics, like the belt buckle he wears is a great one too, an example of that, that separate them from each other. A show like Friends, look how different, Phoebe is from Rachel and Ross, and the characters are so different and unique, and that's really what you're aiming for. And then a lot of this started to change, kind of morphed into narrative television with, particularly, I think HBO can be credited with starting it with shows like The Wire, which was incredible, The Sopranos. There certainly were some shows like Dallas in the past that kind of played around with it, but never went full on, narrative television. And then, of course, Netflix with House of Cards, taking the older British show and then putting it into modern context and just blowing that whole thing up now to the point where there's, original shows out every other week, it seems like. Ozark and Breaking Bad, and just tons of Walking Dead narrative style television. Mad Men, especially, is another great one to look at. It's kind of a morphing of these, but you can tell it's the same. It's the same type of thing when it comes to the writing. It's just done structurally and a little bit different, where you're not necessarily resolving something, with your character. Walter White, isn't resolving a drug trade over one episode. It's going over maybe 3 or 4 in a typical realm. And then when he and Jesse, start cooking meth in the houses using the cover of the termite removal, so it kind of follows different little stories within the bigger story of him dying from cancer, really surviving with cancer, living with cancer, and becoming the crazy I am the one who knocks character. So those are the type of definite shows to look out for, the ones that you like, that really carry along like that. And it's like this long form of what used to be television episodes that you'd see on HBO and that type of stuff. So it's kind of this great morphing and really a great opportunity for you as young writers, because there's so much content getting produced in that form now. HBO, networks, Netflix, all of begs the question: what is television in modern times? Which is it's no longer to me a differentiation of format where it's like I Love Lucy on television versus War of the Worlds at the movie theater, or something in more context, even a show like Friends versus a movie like you know I can't even think of a movie I've been to recently. The drama movie. It's been so long, over a year, I guess. All I can think of is stuff on Netflix. So Take a look at how that's all changing and where it's going, and just whatever form that you like to write for, whether it's you think you want to be a television writer, that's definitely going to be more of a writer's room environment where you're writing with others, or you want to be a narrative writer where you're writing a movie that might get produced into something. So we'll go through the differences there. But again, for your final project, make sure you're following your proper format. You're following the story structure that we talked about with the beginning, a middle, and end. Following the beats, the inciting incident in the beginning, up to the rug pull in the middle, and then the closure in the end. That should be the opposite bookend of the front opening image. Again, no more than 5 pages. I'm giving you guys this as a constraint. I know you can write more than 5 pages. That's not the point. The point is to show me that you can contain an idea in a specific amount of pages, whether it's 1, 3, or 5. That's the target that we want to do, to tell a story in that. Because if you can, it's very easy. Once you can tell a story concisely, beginning, middle, and end, in a set amount, it's very easy to expand those beats out all the way to the end and then write the scenes out. So it's really the challenge is containing the story into a small constraint like that. When you're writing for television, here's an example, of Walking Dead with Rick jumping off the tank. Television ideas, you work in a writing room and take those ideas and then work together in teams, usually with a showrunner that kind of guides the overall direction. And then that team is coming up with storylines and then developing those storylines into scenes and then writing them out into actual episodes. Again, the core difference is that you're telling the story over a longer term, over an entire season, maybe multiple seasons versus a single setting. But the stories are written to be shot on sets typically is another thing. When you're writing films, you might be writing them just, I'm going to do this out in a field. This is going to take place in a city. It's going to take place in futuristic, like a Matrix-like environment, dream state. So it's just going to be a green screen room that it's all filmed in. Whereas television is usually built for sets. You've got the three wall flats. And your television show is filmed in that, or they pick a place out in Georgia, like Walking Dead, where it's in that little half-built town for a whole season, or it's out in fields at an abandoned prison for a whole season, and then the episodes are written to fit that specific set, which is a little bit different than the way film is written. So that also plays into dialogue as well. Rick has very specific things that he says. The other characters on Walking Dead, they're all very distinct. Sometimes you'll even have a writer per person on a show and that writes that particular character, and they really have just a distinct voice because somebody else is completely writing them. Um, the scripts tend to be shorter with television. Obviously, when you have a television show, it's usually only 20 minutes without commercials to maybe 40 to 50 minutes for a longer 60-minute episode. Of course, Netflix, sometimes they go all the way to 60 minutes, sometimes they go to 30 minutes, 45 minutes, but they're typically shorter, and so keep that in mind when you're writing a show. Look at a show that you like on Netflix, Walking Dead or Breaking Bad, or a Netflix original like Ozark, and then watch it and time it and see how long it actually is. You'll find that the longer shows like House of Cards and dramas and that type of thing are typically about 60 minutes, 45 to 60 minutes. And the comedies are typically, like a New Girl type of show. Those will tend to be like a 30-minute type of thing. But again, just look, you have to watch for what you're going to write and then kind of follow that same thing. Big point is that there are 5 acts instead of 3 acts, so it's more of that Shakespearean structure of like a play that the show plays out as. And not every show is like that, and that's certainly changing. You watch some of the modern ones, and they're definitely 3 act structures with a clear, beginning, middle, end, boom, boom, boom. But we'll go through that a little bit more. But just have a heads up with that they are different structure when it comes to that, and typically it's 5 acts versus 3. And you can look up more what that means with some of the links that are in the presentation. The stories are typically not resolved, like we said, in a show. Very rarely is something like resolved in one show. Even if it's a procedural show like Law and Order or CSI, that crime might be solved in a show, but the overall storyline of the CSI team working together, it carries out. The characters are still the same, episode to episode to episode, and there is something usually that that's carried over even in the procedural shows to make it feel like it's a story that we're following along. And then, of course, that can play out over multiple seasons. You know, Walking Dead, perfect example. I don't even know how many seasons it's at now. It's insane how long that's been. Their zombies have been walking around the world. Breaking Bad. For me, I like shows that typically run about 5 seasons. Dexter, I absolutely loved Dexter the first 3 seasons. But then around season 5, it just started. I started losing interest in crazy plot lines, and they started adding in all these different, non-story elements that are kind of like not really who you think Dexter is as a character, and that's typical on a lot of shows. They kind of run out of steam around that point. It's very difficult, to keep it fresh and keep it going after so many seasons. Particularly when those seasons are long. You look at a show like Community, and they were something like, I don't remember, 15 or 20 episodes a season, and there's like 7 seasons. Ton of shows to keep going for. It's great if you're working on them. It's a long-term job. That's one of the great things about television is it's more of like a actual job than it is, a contract. You're on a film set. The writer typically writes the movie, gets paid maybe somewhere between, you know, 40,000 to 90,000 up front, and then maybe that same amount on the back end when the deal goes through. But other than that, you have very little hands-on input, and you're not sitting on the set consulting the director and cinematographer. You're pretty much cut out of the picture at that point on film. Whereas television, you're very much in control and part of the team. That's a big difference. And for those that want to direct, it's kind of the opposite. Director on a picture has all the control, pretty much everything that goes down on that narrative film set. Versus television, directors can change every single episode of Walking Dead or every single episode of you know Breaking Bad. They can it's literally the control rests with the showrunner and the writers. A lot of power. So that's another big point as well. That takes us with that. Again, we'll go into a little bit more with structure here, television structure. The key difference is that it's told out over 5 acts. Typically, that's in 30 minutes or 60 minutes, depending on commercials, depending what kind of form it's being watched on, streaming or network television. First act, you have the prologue. You're introducing the characters in the episode, what's going to go on, who's really going to be like in. Maybe you're switching focus between episodes with your characters. So you're going to show, that, Jesse this time is in the El Camino in Breaking Bad, and he, you kind of know that the episode's going to be more focused on him. He faces the conflict as it's rising. It's getting more intense. The drug dealers come in, meet up at a location. There's a climax. Maybe Walter White, who's the key, main character of Breaking Bad, comes in and helps save the day. Then we find that it's not quite saved, and there's this falling action. So you can see that it's the same structure we talked about for a movie. It's just done in more acts. You break it out into more sections. Where that falling action comes down into a dead announcement, and we think Jesse and Walter are dead. It's all over, and then somebody else comes in, and saves the day and helps them out of that situation. And, Mike comes out of nowhere and then saves the two and helps them out and brings them back to the normal world where they're now back to reset for another day of this crazy adventure in the next episode. So, again, that's kind of how it works with the 5 acts. The character introduction, there's a problem presented. We have an escalation of the problem. It's even worse. It blows up to this massive issue. There's a rug pull, sometimes it's called, or then that, where you think they're going to make it out, and then something terrible happens. It makes it seem like there's no way out. Sometimes it's called the darkest night of the soul, the darkest moment of the picture. Then a lot of times in television, a time element will be introduced at this point. There's a ticking bomb or a ticking clock, where they have to do something before X happens. That'll usually be introduced at this time as well, and then they'll carry that through as the character is victorious in the end, and the problem is resolved, the bomb's diffused, the clock is reset for the next episode. And there's always that hook with television to carry you, you make you want to watch, what's going to happen next when that guy's coming back for sure next week, and he's going to bring all the goons with him, So I love the books that I told you guys to read, by the way. Let me look at these right here. Hopefully, you guys bought these. If you want to be a serious writer, the first one that I said was Save the Cat. I do love this book. I literally swear by the structure of it. I know a lot of writers, are more, oh, that's not very artistic, following a structure like that. But it is a great way to get started and a great way to start. Once you learn the structure and you can write that way, then you can start manipulating it on your own. And then, of course, the other one, which we're kind of looking at a illustration of, is this writer's journey. There's two versions of it. I have the new one. I had the old one. I just got this one on Amazon for like $15 used. Great deal. That's kind of more of like what we're looking at below, where you see this circle. There's some great illustrations in this book about the hero's journey, and that's really where this comes from. Is Joseph Campbell was a comparative religious scholar who came up with all these beautiful papers and just did all this observations about stories that we've told over the centuries as humans, and he put them into format where it's called The Hero's Journey. You can look it up. And then this book, as I've said, is based on the hero's journey. It's writers that realized a lot of the Disney movies, a lot of the movies that we were telling in modern times very much follow that same hero's journey, and he put it into the writer's journey, taking it through these different acts where the hero goes down to collect something in the underworld, but loses a part of his or her personality, or has to give up something to bring that back to humanity so that we can be changed for better. But that person is, the hero is forever changed as well, sometimes in a negative way for having done so. So you can see a lot of that in that book. It's great. Again, certainly applies to both television and film writing. It's just how you're applying it over the course of the story. And then there's some links in this presentation where you can click here for reading more about plot structure, and check those out in the actual presentation. Television storylines, this is a little bit of a difference, whereas in a film we might have an A story that the movie is about, John McClane, I think it was, right, in Die Hard, trying to save his wife from the terrorists. Then you have the B story that's part of that. In television, you also have a C story that's kind of carried out. It's a smaller storyline arc that's carried over a longer term. And, sometimes it's a few seasons, sometimes it's one season, sometimes it's just multiple episodes, in a procedural type of television show. But it's always a longer term act, that you don't really have in movies. And sometimes you have it within a sequel. When something's going into part 2, part 3, Back to the Future as an example, where it's carried over like that. That almost is one movie, even though it's 3 parts. It's almost one long movie, right? It's kind of like a long version of a television show today. And then some movies kind of force it, where you can tell that the movie did so well that they really wanted to have a 2, maybe even a 3. So they kind of forced the longer storyline and made something like Die Hard as an example. Now the terrorists are at the airport. Now they're at the kid's birthday party. Next thing you know, they're at, his funeral, right? Pulling him out of the casket. It's because they can still make money on the series. So sometimes it is forced, but typically you don't see it in a narrative film. Whereas television shows always have the main storyline that's the core of the show. The world of zombies is carried all the way out to this day, years later, in Walking Dead. Then there's a plot device to keep a story moving. Maybe it's the prison, defending the prison, or the RV, keeping the RV moving so that they can get from town to town. Some kind of plot device that helps keep that narrative story moving. And then, of course, the longer one. And then you guys can look up on this link as well for writing storylines, to give you some more info on that. Writing dialogue. I never really got into Game of Thrones here, just because I don't like the dialogue on it. I think they swear way too much for me in that type of world. It takes me out of it personally. I know a lot of people love it. So it all comes down to, what you like as a writer. Make it work. Obviously I would never want to participate on a show like that. I know it's great and people love it, but it's not my thing. I grew up playing Dungeons and Dragons and, watching fantasy movies that, like Conan the Barbarian, and that's my idea of Game of Thrones. Uh, and if I'm going to see something in that realm that doesn't fit that, it's going to be something like Monty Python and the Search for Holy Grail that is just clearly absurd, not in that world. Clacking coconuts for the horses to be moving. But check out these links if you're interested, because this you can actually download the scripts of the television shows, and some of them are incredible. They make great reads if you are interested in film like me. I love reading this type of stuff. Um, some of these scripts are so beautifully written on these television shows. So, and there's a whole bunch of them on there for you to check out. And I do think that is by far the best way to learn, is by start watching and reading existing material, and then kind of making your own off of that, how it works out for you. So when you're doing dialogue, you want to make sure that you're paying attention to using it as a way to set up the world. The characters, the way they talk, you can clearly see that they're in that particular world. In the scene descriptions and the action should support that. And then the character establishment, the world setup, the TV plot structure, intrigue to engage the audience into the lives of these characters, and of course, like I said, a hook at the end for the next episode should all work together with the writing and the dialogue to carry that through. And like I said, definitely check out these scripts. You can go in there and download them for free, and they're pretty awesome to read. When it comes to genre, you have it in television just like film. You typically see it fall into these buckets: drama, comedy, action adventure, and then horror thriller. You do see other stuff in there every now and then. A western, a new take on a western, Westworld type of thing, where it's a new take on something. But typically, the buckets that you see are popular on Fox, on Netflix, on any of the new stuff, HBO, Amazon. Orange is the New Black here is an excellent example. That was categorized as a comedy originally, but the Emmys forced them to call it a drama, and it's certainly in between. It's definitely a dark drama. Is really, that crossover like we talked about, where you're melding those genres, you're fusing genres together. That's certainly a great opportunity if you can pull it off. House of Cards was able to kind of do that. Orange is the New Black absolutely does it. This comedy here, Modern Family, I loved for years. Really great job doing his comedy. 24 absolutely nails the action adventure there with that time clock, obviously built right into their name. So there's an obvious, uh, you know, ticking clock there in every single episode that makes it exciting to watch. Hitchcock used to say that you always want to show a bomb in the opening scene of your movie, and then it's under the seat the entire time, and it never goes off. It's just ticking, and that's how you keep suspense in your movie. The second it goes off, you have no more suspense in the movie. You have to build it a different way. Something like Taken, the daughter is captured in the opening scene, and he's such a badass. He's killing everybody the whole way through the movie. And 7 movies later, different titles, completely different movies, and he's still doing the same thing, right? But you're creating that sense of urgency in those pilot scripts. You want, when somebody's reading it, you want them to be like, wow, this is really action oriented. They can feel the adventure. They feel like the main character might be, dead at any moment, actually, even though that they have to make it through the end of the, episode and season. Same thing with horror. You can't just go killing off your characters on the first episode in your horror movie, unless, of course, you're, the American Horror Story, who does it incredibly and tells those stories well and turns people into ghosts. And if you're interested in horror, that is absolutely the modern show to watch. Again, there's tons of different examples out here for these, but these are the basic genre buckets that you're going to want to look at. Show Bibles are a little bit different as well from a narrative film. You might put together like a pitch deck for a film, but you're certainly not going to put together an entire Bible. You will for a television show. And it'll have a one-page pitch sheet that has the log line of the show, the tone of the project, the genre of the project, and then it'll have character descriptions with the bio and maybe a catchphrase. Pop, pop. If you're on Community, you all know, if you watch that, you know exactly what character that is, right? That each character's, the the shows, they all have their own unique catchphrases and bios written into the, maybe a whole page even into the Bible. And then if the characters have key relationships, like again with Community and Britta, and what's the main character? The other main character I can remember is Jeff. If Britta and Jeff have an ongoing flirtatious, um, or Abed and Troy, you'll write those two you'll write those relationships into the Bible, and maybe a page for every relationship that you have. Britta and Jeff might have a page written about their relationship and how flirtatious it is, and it always goes near, something happening, but then backing off. And then the same type of thing, with Troy and Abed, and just going into that a bit more. Their needs, their wants as characters. You'll you'll sketch out the future episodes. You'll sketch out the journey, that's going to happen over the season. You outline any essential key elements that might happen, like the paintball, episode, or the what else, or the monkey and the vent, on Community as an example. You'll sketch that kind of stuff out, and where it goes. And then an overview of the world with the mood board. And use images to kind of highlight what the mood of the different scenes should look like. Again, those are particular sets. You might even want to make some sets out of foam board type of thing, and like again like they do on Community with they make an actual show out of it. Um, and character interactions. Again, there's a link here. I love Studio Binder. I give you guys a lot of links to them. They are great. They sell an actual product software that if you're interested in doing producing, again, I don't sponsor it or anything like that. I do use it myself sometimes for projects. I use Movie Magic mostly for my scheduling and budgeting. And then Studio Binder, though, their software is more for like managing your overall project. You can write scripts in there. You can make script breakdowns, all kinds of great stuff. And they give a lot of it away for free, and then they charge for the more advanced things that you might want to add in. But the thing I love about them is they put out great content for free that supports that whole environment. So me personally, I love companies like that. Moment is another one. I use them for my lenses on my smartphones. I get little lenses like this that go onto my smartphone, and they sell cases as well for your phone. And then that lens goes on the case just like that. And this is an anamorphic lens for my cell phone, my smartphone, which is great. But not only do they sell these lenses, they support the film community by having smartphone movie film festivals, which is awesome. So I love these companies that kind of build a world around their product. They're not just trying to sell you, a light a software. They're really helping give to the community. And I think with like these freemiums they call them, where they give you something for free and then you pay a premium for something else. I think that's a great thing, and I really like that a lot of them are participating in the film world. So I support those. Studio Binder.
Welcome back to Studio Binder's series.
When you go through these, when I embed the movies, I notice it starts them automatically when you advance the slide. You can just jump over them if you don't want to watch the videos, but I highly recommend watching the videos. This one, for instance, is only 4.5 minutes long, and it is excellent about going through and explaining the. Here's a good example.
Create the feeling that the show could go on forever.
When I'm doing episode ideas for an outline, I would say 5 to 6 is perfect. And everything needs to be boiled down to the bare essentials. If you want to convince that your story has a lot of legs, your characters have to be
Collect all of these inspiring elements and present them together.
So exactly
world building is very important.
Just reinforcing what I just talked about to you guys. Or sorry, not you guys, to y'all or you students. Again, if you're really interested in filmmaking, just follow along these threads. Camera movement, Kubrick, Tarantino. There's so many great things in there from Studio Binder, No Film School. Whole bunch of those sites you can find pretty easily. Premium Beat is another one I really love. Just follow the links if you're interested in really learning more. It's a great way to keep that going. This is an excellent example right here as well. Like I was talking about earlier with Breaking Bad. These is a total breakdown of the how to pitch a pilot for television. Two great episodes that you can watch here, going through the origin of the character, giving them a human hook. Walter White is a school teacher who's like down on his luck with cancer. He's a bum in his life. His wife's doesn't respect him. His kid doesn't respect him, and then he comes out of that and blows up into the one who knocks. In that scene where he explains that when he knocks on the door, he is the bad guy. And there's nobody to be feared in the in the world more than Walter White at that point, and you know why, because you've seen him become broken, as the show's called, Breaking Bad. We saw him break bad over the course of this character arc, and you want to show that, you want to tell that in the descriptives of when you're pitching. You want to be able to show the desires. You want to be able to talk like this, just looking your audience in the eye and telling them why Breaking Bad is going to be such a great show. It really takes you understanding your characters and your plots and your story enough to be able to do that. I have a script that I'm developing that you might have seen in the intro called Hooch, and I was working on my thesis when I was at Chapman. We did it it was set in 1917 at the end of World War One. When this guy Bhagat Singh was an Indian, he was promised American citizenship after the war, and then when he came here, he was told his skin was too brown, which is disgusting. He fought proudly. He had a great service record, and yet he was told he couldn't get citizenship because of the Asian Exclusion Act, which said you had to be a Caucasian for that rule to apply. Long story short, he did fight that for another 2 decades and ultimately changed it to today. No matter your race, creed, whatever, if you fight in the United States military, you're awarded U.S. citizenship at the end of that because of, Bhagat's acts. So, like I said, that was filmed we had the setting in 1917, World War One. And as we were doing it, we had a character that we had to cut because we didn't have time. And our cinematographer had extremely intense celiac disease and couldn't even be around flour. So we had this character who was in a bakery that's set in World War One during Prohibition, or right at the beginning of Prohibition, and she's making moonshine, and selling it out the back. And she had this whole backstory, but we had to cut her. And I loved that story so much that I kind of took that and I wrote a Bible about her being a war widow, and she's supporting her family when her brother dies by selling hooch out of the back of the bakery. And she's evading the FBI because at the time, male FBI agents weren't allowed to search female women, even if they were known to have booze on them. There were no FBI agents that were female at the time. So it wasn't until female agents started coming into the picture that these women started getting busted. So we've built kind of a story around that, and that's what I'm working on now. That's one of my projects. You have to know that so well that you can just talk about it freely, and when people ask you questions, you can answer them and go back and forth, and really show the desires, show the obstacles, show the highlights, and then the road of what's the open road of that show. How does that stay open? How does she evade prohibition, for instance? She hooks up with the mayor of the town, and she starts supplying booze to the upper class who still want to be able to party. And they kind of shroud her from the FBI to keep all that moonshine flowing. That's the open road of where the story then continues into the future. So again, watch these, have your own pitch path. You don't have to use this one, but you absolutely have to be able to just pitch your project and understand it, to somebody that might be interested in funding it. And then, obviously create a unique world like we've talked about. It should be similar to the log line, but more detail. And then make sure that you're showing in visuals. And then obviously in real images on the pitch deck. And then come through these, and these are great examples that you guys can check out here. So
You
In
watch
this
the
video, I'm
pilot
going to
for
show
a
you
new
the
show.
basic.
again, the film screening for this week is the holiday movies that made us. I think it's a great overlap between television and film. It's a Netflix streamer. As long as you can get into Netflix, you should be able to watch it. And again, it is recommended. You don't have to watch it, and it's not going to impact whether or not you can do your writing. So, but I do think it is a great illustration of kind of the molding between the two realms of television and film that are happening. Documentaries for sure are a massive opportunity on Netflix. You know, anything that you can write a documentary about, or actually just go and shoot and possibly get made into a movie. There's a great one called High Score that's about video game players. It's awesome. There's one called The Social Dilemma, I believe it's called. That's all about social networking and social media. Absolutely great. Tons of great documentaries on there about everything that is important today. So it's a great thing to be a part of. So watch it, do the readings, and then submit your screenplay by Wednesday. Again, that's wrong. I'm going to fix it. It should be 10 February, which is Wednesday. And yeah, get that done. Web content. I hope you guys have found this helpful. I've just been, if you have, by the way, just shoot me a quick email that said what you did or didn't find helpful. If there was something that you wouldn't recommend, a reading, or an exercise that we did that wasn't really all that helpful, or if there's something you would rather have done, let me know in an email as well, so I can adapt the class. Again, this is my first time teaching at Pasadena City College PCC, so that would help me. But I've been adding these weekly, just to give you guys something extra to read if you're interested. And I really enjoyed this article on Vox about creating worlds that feel true, they feel real. Certainly applicable to me. I want to film Hooch in my hometown of Boston, and I can think of some areas like old downtown Boston, over by where the old Boston Garden used to be. Beautiful old downtown areas that if you took the cars away, it still looks like 1920. So creating that world where it feels real, it feels authentic, is really great. And this is a great article, so check that out for sure. And that takes us to the summary. It is our last class. I highly encourage you guys to keep writing for sure. You guys are great writers. I really appreciated reading and giving you guys feedback. Make sure you go through this lecture. You can watch this one here. Obviously, you're watching it. But you can also read it and follow the links in the other lecture where I'm not talking. And then make sure you do your 5-page screenplay. Contain it to 5 pages. Tell me a story in 5 pages. It can be an expanded version of something you've already done. That's fine. Or it can be something completely new. It's totally cool. Just make sure beginning, middle, end. We've got a title page. You don't have to put your address on there. I have a P.O. box. And it's not even a P.O. box. It's like one of those mailbox, etc. things that I put on mine. But you can put your a phone number. And if you don't want to do a phone number, you can do an email. You can make up an email real easy that's appropriate for writing on Gmail or whatever as well. And then just check that box. But you always want to contact information, because you never know how somebody's going to find your screenplay. And if they don't know how to get a hold of you, it's just a lost cause. So, title page, and then proper formatting, stick to the story structure, beginning, middle, end, and watch the movie that made us on Netflix if you're interested. Also watch the Hollywood movies that made us, and then also watch the movies that made us if you're even more interested and want some more to watch on Netflix. It's great. Highly recommend it. Again, my email, you guys are welcome to contact me. And other than that, I've had a great time. I hope you enjoyed the class as well, and I wish you guys the best of luck in the future.